the Spanish Inquisition.
Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have a mighty game review of Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr. I'm going to dive into the game here a bit. Let's start with the developer and the publisher is Neocore Games. The engine for this game is Cortec 3. It was initially released August 2017 for Windows PC, and then later it'd be released in August 2018, so about a year later, for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It is an action role-playing game. It's set in the Warhammer 40k universe. Obviously, it's a Warhammer 40k game. And you're playing the part of an Inquisitor. And basically, your task is to find the ship known as the Martyr. You're going to go through the process of doing that, and honestly, I don't know much past that because I still haven't seen the end game yet with my about 50 hours of gameplay. Now that being said, there's a lot of different stuff to do in this game, sort of, kind of, because there's a lot of secondary missions with the mission types having different things, such as activating different consoles, collecting information, killing heretics, which is my favorite part, purge the heretic with flame. And there's a bunch of different weapons and equipment. It is like I said, it is an action role-playing game very similar to that of Diablo 2. And of the Diablo 2 clones I have played, well, this one's actually not bad. It's not the greatest game ever made, but it does a pretty good job. There is 4 classes in the game. You have your Tactical Inquisitor, your Psyker Inquisitor, Assassin Inquisitor, and then there's a Tech Priest type of Inquisitor, each with 3 subclasses that are set up in various different ways, such as with my Tactical, I decided to go for a for my Tactical Inquisitor, I decided to go for more of, I believe they call it the Crusader, which is more of a ranged combat, well, kind of more of a multi-purpose build than a ranged combat build, but I ended up going with more of a ranged combat build. But then there's other types too where I could have went with more of a melee build, and it basically adjusts your initial skills, the type of equipment you're going to find more commonly, and basically your starting equipment. I've also played the Assassin, which when I did the Assassin, I did the Sniper Assassin, which people might recognize from Warhammer 40k as the Vindicare Assassin. And the Vindicare Assassin is actually quite a bit of fun if you're more into long-range combat. I haven't messed with the other ones too much, although I have a friend that plays the Psyker, which it looks like a lot of fun. It's kind of more or less, if you're playing Diablo 2, think of along the lines of a sorcerer. It does actually have a good, interesting story. There's not a lot of information I can give you there story-wise, because I really haven't dove in deep into it, but there's a lot of different things to learn as you're doing the essentially information seeking as the Inquisitor, and it just builds up to a point where you have to go to different parts of the galaxy actually to complete different missions, to collect the different information, to find out what happened to the Inquisitor Martyr and where it's located. Understand that the Inquisitor Martyr, in context, is a very old ship that disappeared a long time ago and just suddenly reappeared. So the Inquisition is taking very good, very interesting notes and wants more information on the ship. The graphics, I feel, are actually not bad, and the sounds are actually rather good. The heavy bolter sounds like a heavy bolter. Chainsword sounds like a chainsword. However, not all the sounds are great. Like the plasma weapon sounds are kind of lackluster, and there's some other sounds in the game that are kind of lackluster, but in general terms, the sounds are fairly good. The game does actually have a crafting system, and that's more or less where you're going to get your end game equipment from. As you progress through the game, you'll start doing crafting, and essentially through different perks and etc. upgrades from crafting, you can actually craft some really powerful weaponry. That being said, you can also find some good weaponry, but from what I could tell and what I've seen so far, the better weaponry comes from crafting. Same way with armor. There is hidden missions in the game. You can collect intelligence, which will give you different missions. There's also a tarot card system that allows you to do additional missions as well. So there's a lot of secondary content that you can do in this game. I didn't really take notice of any bugs, although we did have some complications, which I'll get into here in a little bit, mostly with the online play. That being said, the game looks and feels like Warhammer 40k should. It's dank. It's dark. It's a lot of corridors. It's got Tyranids. It's got Dark Eldar. It's got Chaos, and it's got Renegades. There's also Eldar as well. That being said, though, no Orcs, no Tau, nothing along that line. No Necrons. Although I feel like there's an opening particularly that they could add Necrons into this. And they are doing content still for the game. Little minor updates from what I've seen, particularly with the seasons. So who knows? Maybe at some point or another, they will decide to develop and install Necrons into the game. That being said, the negative side of the game is it is definitely a more repetitive game. It kind of suffers the same thing as Diablo 2, where you're kind of more or less doing the same thing over and over again. Finding a group of enemies, hacking and slashing your way through it, or in the case of Inquisitor Martyr, shooting your way through it most of the time. Of course, there is melee builds. And that's really generally it. There's nothing really special here. Now, that being said, I don't think the developer was really out to reinvent the wheel of the action role-play game. And in general terms, it is kind of a Diablo 2 clone with a bit of a twist on it by making ranged combat weapons the more important weapons and using the 40k universe. That being said, of the Diablo 2 clones I've actually played, this one is actually one of the better ones. Now, the one thing I've noticed when playing online is the load time is awful. I'm not sure what the load time are based on. Basically, I load into missions almost instantaneously when playing by myself, but when playing with other people, it seems to take a long time. Also, the initial loading of the game seems to be extremely long. That's when I very first played the game. But after the initial launch of the game, that part didn't seem so bad. But yeah, load times I would say be aware of. Can take a long time. And at times you may even need an egg timer. That's how long the loads are. Had some issues with friends getting DC'd while playing the game online as well. I never got DC'd from anyone, but I've had issues where friends got DC'd. And it would happen actually fairly regularly. Not talking clockwork regularly, but, once every couple missions, maybe every other mission, one of the guys would get disconnected from everyone else. The game itself can get rather boring, to be honest, and it's, like I said, it's got the same problem as Diablo 2. You're essentially doing the same thing over and over again. Now, that being said, the missions are short. Most of the missions will only run you, give or take, 10-15 minutes. That's probably the average, is around 10 minutes. I've had some that were shorter. I've had some that were longer. Lots of dark corridors. And honestly, that's just the case for this game. There's just a lot of dark corridors. Now, that being said, you're spending a lot of your time in manufactoriums, ships, etc. There's not too many bright, open maps. There is a couple missions that do take place on a more bright, open area, but they actually seem to be the exception, not the rule. Now, all that being said, the core game, is $50 on Steam, with the collection that includes all the DLCs, which there's a lot of DLCs to this game. A lot of the DLCs are like $2, $3. But essentially, it gets to the point that there's so many DLCs that it really stacked up into a massive pile of DLCs. And the collection ends up being $80. Personally, I don't recommend the game for that price. Honestly, you can usually catch this thing on Steam on sale for like $20 for the collection, or it was like $25 for the collection. I don't quite remember what I paid for it. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was definitely well worth that price tag. Yes, it's not a game that I'm going to sit there and work my way through in one long session. Like I said, I got about 50 hours into the game, and I'm nowhere near done completing the game, to be honest. Just the core story of the game, because there's just so much secondary stuff that has kept me occupied, such as collecting intelligence and the tarot card system, which I'm still actually trying to get an acquirement on how that works. That being said, this is one of those type of games too, though, that you're going to play for a bunch of hours, more than likely put it down for a little while, and come back to it. So in that regard, when it's on sale, I definitely recommend picking up Inquisitor Martyr. I actually found the game to be a lot of fun in short bursts. It's just longevity-wise, it's not so fun. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed my review on Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr. And have yourself a wonderful day.